Dawson's Rambles.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Today I'm going to do a discussion video on the Power Rangers 2017 movie in honor of the recent anniversary. What, 5 years now? Crazy how time flies. You know, this movie had some mixed responses. It did bomb at the box office, which is crazy, but it holds an interesting place in history because Saban really seemed to hold it up as this thing they were hedging all their bets on. But when it came down to it, it obviously didn't do very well, and it kind of led to Hasbro ultimately buying the brand. And I want to talk about why it failed, or why I think it might have failed. You know, what went wrong. I don't want this to be an entirely negative video because I actually really like this movie, so this is going to kind of be more of a discussion on what I just think went wrong and not necessarily why it was bad. I'm going to try to end the video on some things I really liked about the movie personally. I'm also probably going to talk a little bit about how Hasbro might learn from this experience, because a lot about this feels like something we would see from a Hasbro Netflix reboot in a lot of ways. So what did go wrong? Everything. I think two main things, in my opinion, went wrong. I think it had to do with the marketing and the toy line. Because I think marketing is obviously key with anything in terms of getting the brand out there and getting the name out there and getting hype out there. The promotion for this movie was very weird. I don't want to say non-existent, but close to it. You know, there was a lot of fanfare when they announced the movie, just in terms of the fandom and in terms of what Saban seemed to want to do with this movie. It seemed like this movie's success was the key to the rest of the franchise future, both in terms of it starting more movies and just the franchise overall. It seemed like this was where they were placing all their bets. Then after that, we got like a cast announcement, we saw a look at them, and then it was like quiet. It took a ridiculously long amount of time for us to get a teaser and then ultimately a trailer. It was really weird how long it took. And then even after it came out, I don't remember seeing the trailers and whatnot that much around. Like, it wasn't like, oh, the trailer came out and then you see it on TV all the time, like with Batman. I mean, obviously Power Rangers isn't Batman, but you know what I mean. Like we finally released the trailer, but it was really only for YouTube and the fans that wanted to see it. There was very little promotion for the movie overall. In fact, the most promotion I remember happening for this movie was the week it came out. You know, you see those little 30-second spots of now in theaters. They almost showed those too much. Like, they showed it so much, I wish I hadn't seen the movie. They were being so annoying. You know, there was various interviews and promotion around, but it was very small. You know, when you guys see a movie come out, I'm sure you're used to seeing like the trailers, and you'll see the stars on this and that talk show or morning show. And unless you were looking for it, there was just very little presence of marketing for this movie, which was just so strange because Saban seemed to be placing so much on this movie, but then when it came time to deliver it, it's like they half-assed it. It makes you wonder if they gave up on it before it even came out. And of course there's the toy line. We know that Power Rangers and Toku in general over in Japan relies a lot on the toy line, and Power Rangers always has. And it's not like the toy line didn't have presence. I'll give them credit there. The toy line did have presence. Like, you go to the store shelves and there was a good amount of toys on the shelf, like a good presence of, oh my god, there's a new movie coming out. That's something I always really like about our style of doing things, where instead of having the toy sync up with the debut in the show or whatever, you get a big movie display a few months before the movie comes out, generates a lot of hype. It had good presence in regards to there being stuff on the shelves. In fact, just thinking back to the way the shelves looked filled with 2017 movie merchandise, we had a lot more presence than we do now, where the presence on the toy shelf is thinner than that lamp back there. Power Rangers, where is it at? It's like a scavenger hunt. Trying to find a Power Rangers toy now is like, where's Waldo? This isn't what this is about. Point is, they had good presence, but the toy line was very lackluster. There was a couple things that were fine. I think the main figures were fine. The legacy releases I thought were good. I think the already put together Megazord wasn't half bad. Like, it was decent looking, better looking, and more accurate than the big version, and it had some fun features for kids. But other than that, you know, the Zords, I don't mind the designs for them personally, which I'll get into later. But just talking about the toys themselves, they were very cheap feeling. Very, like, even literally hollow, like you could put a drink in them. And the marketing behind combining all of them into the biggest Zord ever was pretty cool, but it didn't look that cool when you put it together, and it didn't even look like it did in the movie. And then there's the Morpher, which didn't even exist in the movie. I don't know whether there was deleted scenes or deleted concepts from the Morpher, or whether Bandai just decided to make one because they knew they wanted/needed a Morpher, but the Morpher wasn't in the movie, so there's like no reason to generate hype to buy it. And then whether it was in the movie or not, it was just a gray circle of plastic. The thing is the toy line was very lackluster. It felt like a B-list bootleg toy line. It shouldn't have been. With them putting so much on this movie, they should have put their best foot forward instead of no foot forward. Definitely could have been better considering how big a part of the brand toys are. There's the movie itself. A lot of people had problems with the movie and the way it was presented and the designs and stuff, and I certainly think that could have played a factor. I personally didn't mind the designs. They're not my favorite, but I think they can be cool in their own right. I do like the concept of them, which was taking a lot of the alien sort of feel of it and merging it with the prehistoric and PR designs to sort of take the Power Rangers mythology and put their own twist on it. I liked the concept, but maybe they could have been worked on more. The suits weren't terrible, but they definitely kind of reeked of the modern gritty reboot trying too hard feel with a little bit of bootleg in there. The Zords I actually kind of dug, but I think they could have worked on them more, and especially worked on the way the Megazord looked more. Mainly because like the Zord's end product kind of looked more like the concept art you see later. Like, oh yeah, that was cool, but I'm glad they went in a different direction. I think they had a basis there, but I think they could have tweaked it and made it better. Thinking about this in regards to what Hasbro could do in terms of the movie and how they look, I actually think something like the original 90s movie suits could work, because I think that's kind of a happy medium between something more cinematic and professional looking and something more familiar, rather than this, which felt like all CGI Green Lantern type of stuff. I personally don't hate it, but I think a lot of the aesthetics might have put people off, especially stuff like Goldar, where Goldar was definitely the laziest bit. I mean, I didn't care. A lot of people were like, they ruined Goldar's character, but I don't really care what they do with the source material, honestly. Like, throw it in the garbage for all I care. But I just thought it looked bad. Like, people love to complain about CGI monster fights, and this was like the ultimate CGI monster fight because it was literally just goop. But that was pretty bad, so I could see the aesthetics playing a role. In regard to the content of the movie itself, a lot of people complained that it didn't have enough action. I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with getting butts in seats before the movie came out, because obviously going in, you're not going to know what's in the movie. I personally preferred that there was more story, but I could see that not inspiring repeat viewings or gaining a lot of traction. So even though personally I liked the balance it had, I think maybe if they had balanced out the action a little bit more, it might have gotten some more repeat viewings. The thing that I think is interesting is, like I said, the movie bombed. I think it only made like $40 million profit or something. It was like, I don't remember, it was like a budget of like 100 something, and I don't know, it bombed. I think it's interesting to think about. I don't think this movie was lacking in fan support. I mean, I saw a lot of fan support for the movie both before and after it came out, and I think it's kind of a good scale to measure on when talking about making things for the fans versus not. Because there's a lot of talk about the upcoming Hasbro reboot and appealing to fans versus casuals. And for me, at least personally, looking back on this experience with this movie, I think that this was a good example of what happens if you only have the fan support. I think that too often the fans think they only need to cater to us, but we forget how small the hardcore fandom is. I'm not talking about overall fans, because Power Rangers is a pretty recognizable brand. I'm talking about the hardcore fans that watched every season, that are watching these videos, that watch Sentai. That's a pretty small group, and if you only have that supporting the product, this is what happens. That's why I think Hasbro needs to reach out to those casual fans that only remember Power Rangers from the 90s, or fans that only know Power Rangers in name, and be more appealing to that. I'm not saying this movie only focused on that appeal, because I think it was trying to be broadly appealing more so with its content, but I'm saying that ultimately it felt like only the fans supported it, and this is a good example of showing what happens when only the fans support it. Now personally, I want to talk a little bit about what I liked, because I really liked this movie, especially during the time it came out. I was starved for Power Rangers content with substance, with the Neo Saban era and its mannequin characters and outdated morals. And this was truly more substance. I liked that we had more focus on the story and character. Two of people's least favorite things about the movie are two of my favorite things about the movie, which is it had more character stuff than action, and that it didn't feel like Toku. I thought it had a really great cast. They had good chemistry. I liked them all individually. I liked them as a group. I like how they developed. I think there was some untapped magic here with the cast and the concept. And honestly, it really surprises me this didn't do well, or that this didn't get a chance to do well, because I actually think the approach was brilliant, because they took kind of the framework of MMPR to get the casuals in there and to play it safe a little bit, but then they really did things differently. The characters were, for the most part, vastly different from their TV counterparts outside of a couple little tropes. I mean, the designs were inspired by MMPR, but they were very different. Outside of the Zords being the same dinosaurs, prehistoric creatures, the main suits had very little to do with the original MMPR suits, outside of the triangle or the diamond or whatever, and Red's helmet had some vague similar symmetry to MMPR Red. Of course, you have Zordon and Alpha and Rita, but it was all done very differently. There's a lot to risk with Hasbro doing a full reboot, and this the approach of 2017 more feels like the safe way to go, where you're allowed to be new but also stick to familiar, so you're also in a safety zone. So it's surprising how much this bombed, because I would think this is one of the smartest approaches. And I really liked it. I'm all on board for a full slate clean thing, no mmpr influence, but I liked this. I liked this a lot. I personally am an oddball when it comes to any fandom, because most fandoms hate reboots, but I always kind of like to see them because I love to see what different people see in different stories. And this was what this was. It took the mmpr mythology I knew and twisted it. I loved the idea of Red Ranger Zordon and evil Green Ranger Rita. She was the original Green Ranger and she's wearing a twisted version of the suit. That was so freaking cool. They incorporated the Zeo crystal, and it made me curious to see how they were going to twist the mythology in future movies. I just loved so much about the approach, and I think it was such a perfect mix of safe and new at the same time that I think it's surprising it didn't do well. And I don't necessarily know if it not doing well had anything to do with that. I think that it more so had to do with the marketing, but it's just surprising, because if you were to take out the fact that this movie happened and tell me the ideas about the 2017 movie were the ideas they were going to be using for the Hasbro reboot, I would think that was the smart way to go. As much as I want to see us break free of the shackles of things like Sentai and MMPR, I understand you also have to play it a little bit safe to keep things viable. And in a lot of ways, this movie was kind of a brilliant approach for that, and it kind of sucked that it didn't succeed. I'm really disappointed we're not going to get to continue this universe. I liked the characters, I liked the world. I know we did that little mini Aftershock comic, and I know there's, I think, something to do with the rights of why we can't do anything with this, even not like they would want to, but I would love to see a comic continuation of this story. Even if it was a single graphic novel or a miniseries, I would just love to see some of the original plans play out, because I'm really curious and I would love to see it continue. I mentioned the rights because I was kind of half expecting to see one of them show up in Shattered Grid, and I don't know why we couldn't even do that. I'm sure someone smarter than me knows. That's just everyone. Overall, guys, Power Rangers 2017 movie is an interesting case. Like I said, I think untapped magic and untapped potential. I think that if they had, I think the two main reasons I think it failed, it has a lot to do with the marketing and presentation of both the marketing itself and the toy line. I think if that had done a little bit better and they had done a better job pushing the movie out there, I think the movie could have been done better. I don't think it was ever going to be a blockbuster success, but I think and wish it would have done just better enough to do decent enough to greenlight a sequel, and then they could course correct on some of the things that went wrong, and we might be looking at a different franchise. Who knows? But I want to know, why do you guys think the movie failed? Did you enjoy the movie? Would you be interested in seeing it continuing the storyline in a comic form? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, climb the steps, and ring that bell, so notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.